Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Playful Humans podcast. This podcast is designed to help you and other adults rediscover the power of play. I'm your host, Mike Montague with Playful Humans, and my guest this week is an author, a poet, a vintage enthusiast. His name's Duane Cerny, and we're going to talk to him about what it's like to play for a living. You can find Duane at vintageconfidential.com. That's the name of his latest book, and all the places you can connect with him. If you want to connect with Playful Humans, go to playfulhumans.com and join our club, take the playfulness quiz, do what you got to do to rediscover the power of play. Here we go.
Don't wait for tomorrow. Keep chasing the sunshine. Go right
All right, Duane, welcome to the podcast. We like to start with a joke of the week. The joke of the week this week is brought to you by Tinder, the dating app. I met my wife on Tinder. That was awkward because we got married in 2011. The joke of the week is, what leadership position did Old MacDonald post on his LinkedIn profile? I feel like you could guess this one. He was the executive in charge of external and internal operations. That makes him the EIEIO. Do you have a joke for us?
I like that one. That's good. I wasn't expecting to buy a vowel.
There you go. Yeah, there's only a couple left now.
How many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb?
I don't know. How many psychiatrists?
Only one, but the light bulb has to really want to change.
For sure. All right, that's awesome. That'll get us started in the right mood here. So let's talk about you and your career, because I find it very playful. So you started out kind of studying poetry and getting into writing and creative pursuits, but then you got into selling dead people's things and your vintage enthusiasm and stuff there with antiques. So where should we start first? How did this whole crazy journey start for you?
I think it started because I got out of college with a poetry scholarship, and as my father said, "What are you going to do with that? Sit on a mountaintop?" Which he wasn't far off.
Doesn't know a lot about poetry, though. I feel.
Well, also it was like 1980, so little early. That was even before there were poetry slams, to be honest. So you know what? And I jumped into like the corporate world, and 3 different employers that I had over the course of like 4 or 5 years, and all of them went out of business within like a year or a year and a half of my employ.
Oh. Causation or correlation?
Well, by the third one, I thought I could go out of business on my own. I don't need anybody's help to do that. And so I actually, started a legal word processing business. And then I had attorneys around me all the time, which is, if you want to like shoot yourself, that's a good way to start. And being seriously unhappy with that. I was making good money, but not happy, and it just wasn't true to me. And I was approaching 30, and it wasn't a midlife crisis at all, because I thought, if I did this, I can do something else. And on the side, I started with a friend of mine, a house music label, which was pretty odd for 2 white gay guys in Chicago to do this. But we were good at it, and I was good at packaging, and he was good at marketing, and darn if we didn't pull it off. But at the time, we really didn't know what we were doing. But that was crazy creative, and I can't tell you what a blast it is to have like helped an artist, be pressed on vinyl, the first round of vinyl, not the later one that would come later, and be driving down Lakeshore Drive and hearing the song that you got on the radio.
Wow, that's cool.
That's cool. And we were licensing music all over the world and all that. But you know what? At the end of the day, we were back with the lawyers.
We're sensing a theme, yeah.
Right, and trying to get paid for the records that we'd sold, and it was just like, this is why people hate the music business. And I'm going, well, that didn't work. It scratched the itch of the time, but it also gave me more confidence. And so when I was, really about 30, I said, you know what? I have a little money. I'm going to downsize to just like the bare minimum, move into a studio apartment. I had a big loft downtown. I don't need that. And I went back to just like all the great stuff that I loved growing up, which was like my parents' basement was filled with all the stuff from their first apartment, which was from 1950. And I remember
that's cool.
That was where I played. I mean, as a kid, that's where I played. And my mother liked all this new stuff, as mothers do, right? And that didn't interest me at all because you don't sit on the sofa, but downstairs you could be ripping stuff apart. They don't care. And I went, I said, I really love that. And so I just took time off. I was still doing some paralegal stuff on the side to make some money, but not much. And I just started junking. I just started hitting thrift stores and estate sales and antique stores. And let me tell you, I grew up the kind of family, like, if you don't have any money in your pocket, you don't go into Marshall Fields. You don't go into the expensive stores. You just don't do that.
Yeah.
I had to kind of break that and say, you know what? I'm going to go into the expensive stores and look at stuff. I'm sure people just hated me because I'm not going to buy much. And I just thrifted. So, I mean, I would say, because kind of back in the day, I guess now you'd say I was a picker, but I really wasn't selling things to people. And this was before eBay, just really, really early. And I started I'm going to use the word stalk. If you think stalk is a bad word, but it's not if you stalk a store. And I found a store I really loved, and I stalked the store. I was in there all the time. And I saw stuff going in and out, in and out. I learned so much. I just saw things I'd never seen before. I was never interested in new things.
What are some of your favorite things? You mentioned kind of mid-century stuff there. Well, is that where you live, or just all things eclectic and stuff?
Well, now we flash forward to 2022. I own one of the largest antique stores in Chicago, largest multi-dealer. I've got 75 dealers that are just as crazy as I am. Wow. And everybody collects and deals in different things. And what I loved about this show, and we're going to use that word, is I've got the best job because my life is show and tell. It just is. It's people bringing me stuff all the time, and it's look what I bought, and look what I paid for it, and I don't. This is too great. I don't want to sell it. If I do sell it, how much should I sell it for? This is my life, and it's everything. It's everything. I mean, I learn something new every day, at least every day. So I
have to admit that I got addicted to those shows for the same reason. I think I just love learning, but I love American Pickers. I love the Auction Hunters. I love all of those shows because you always learn something about history or about value. I think is a lot about sales. I'm a sales trainer for my day job too. And man, you can see sales and negotiating skills at the top of their game and all of those shows. I think there's a lot to unpack there. Yeah.
I think Roadshow, both American and UK version, and Pawn Stars are the quality ones. Personally, I'm just saying. But yeah, and I'm not an elitist because my favorite show is Hoarders. You can learn stuff from Hoarders. Just watch out there. Watch the trend of where this has been going. Like every third or fourth episode, they're following the hoarder. And I'm not making fun of hoarders at all. There's high-end hoarders. It's a condition. But we all have that hoarder gene in us. But watch these hoarder shows, and every third or fourth episode, they're following them where? To a thrift store. That's the connective tissue, right? And they're now kind of branching out as the series has grown and going, So before it was
we're gonna have to get into this because I feel like you can answer a bunch of questions that I've always had about this. Number one, you may see, some of my collection behind me. And I kind of got into Star Wars Legos, and then it just all the adult Legos behind me here. But I struggle with this. I think the problem that most collectors have is they become completists, and they feel like they have to have everything, like every spoon that's ever been made or every Lego that's ever been made. And that's where you get into like the hoarder territory and not really selecting quality over quantity and stuff. Do you, I'm sure you see the gamut and you wouldn't necessarily rank one over the other because they'd be like your kids, but do you see maybe some strategies or tactics in collecting that are healthier than others, more profitable than others, maybe more interesting than others? What do you think there?
Uh, yeah, there's a whole lot of questions wrapped up in that one.
Yeah.
I will tell you that I see people come in to my store with spreadsheets because they want to make sure that they don't, and it can be anything then. Okay, it could be Russell Wright China, and I don't have that color, or I do. I got the saucer, but I don't have. I need an extra dessert plate. But you can take
Yeah.
the same. Let's call it psychosis, and apply that to somebody who's collecting. Oh gosh, Playboy magazines, almost anything. I had a customer for years who collected 6-inch advertising rulers, and and he had hundreds of them. But they were advertising. It would always be from some paint store in Iowa or whatever, and that's what he was fascinated with. And then it would lead him down that path of like, oh, this little town in Iowa, I hadn't heard of before, and now I'm looking for postcards from that town. Right?
Wow, that's interesting. So I think you did help me narrow down my question, which is this, because the whole point of this show, I think, is really to enjoy what you love doing. And I think it's healthy as long as you're enjoying it. It's not causing you problems or other people problems. You're having fun. Like, go do your thing, dive into your passions, nerd out on your 6-inch rulers, like whatever you want to do makes happy. Great. But I do feel like with people with the spreadsheets or other things, is you become working so hard that it actually becomes a job. You kind of become a slave to it. And you're like, oh, I have to go do this thing. And that's where I feel like some people mix this up. And I was going to ask you this because I ask everybody on the show, when you take one of your passions like this and you turn it into a career or a business, I think it can easily become a job and not fun anymore. So do you have any advice for maybe the collector side of it? And then somebody that's thinking about doing something like this as a job, how do you keep it fun and playful for yourself?
I think when there's you interject a worry on yourself that and I'll use those two examples that we just put out there. So the let's just say the person, let's just say like dinnerware, it can be okay. I kind of get it because they say, you know what, I have this one, but it's chipped, so I'm getting a better one, and it's solving a problem to them, but it's a good problem because they still love the stuff, right? So that when it gets to be kind of more the obsessiveness of it, and I'll hear people say, well, I come in all the time because I don't want to miss anything, and they're kind of stressing themselves out about it. Right. So, I mean, I think you just kind of have to look within and say, now, if I ask them, are you having fun? They're still having fun. People come up to my store and say, this is my happy place. I can get away from the world is horrible, but it's fun in here, So there's that. I think collectors can just really stress themselves out on this like unsolvable problem of collecting everything and everyone and of whatever. When you do it for a living, it's interesting because when I started, I just couldn't sell. I didn't want to sell anything. That's a problem when people start. I had that problem. My business partner, he didn't have that problem, which was good. But because you get here, you go, you can't keep everything, and if you're really going to do it for a living, you need to sell.
Good partner to have, yeah.
You need to let these things go. So, but that does kind of scratch the itch of like, oh, I get a duplicate of something, I'll sell the lesser one and keep the good one. So you can kind of
that's how you start for sure.
You can kind of maneuver through that. And as you go along, you're going like, okay, I thought this was rare, and now after 10 years, I found 3 of them. That's still pretty rare. I've kept one and I've sold them. What did I get for the last one? It's interesting because I'll put it this way. When you talk about like one of a kind, I can say everything is one of a kind in that, even if something's mass produced, because you go to the condition of it or the price you're willing to pay. Right. So you can go, that's one of a kind, but it's a little too rich for me. So they can, so they can keep it. I kind of also put these things into two boxes of, there's the hoarders where, I'm going into a place, you got to put on booties and a mask, even pre-COVID, and you're actually, digging through garbage, looking for things. And then there's high-end hoarders, which is people with money. And it's really not dirty. It'll be dusty. But those are the best ones because
Buildings of junks. Yeah.
they have money. They have money and they indulge themselves, and you go out in the back and there's 6 cars, and it's just everything is just in the multitudes. Those are fun, but equally disturbing because it's the same personality. It's the same thing. I'll give you an example. I can't part with this Grey Gardens pamphlet. This was from the opening day of the movie Grey Gardens. Now, obviously, I can, but a collection.
I was going to ask you though, what are some things that you've kept for yourself that are like your favorite items you probably wouldn't sell unless something really changed?
Right. Well, I've narrowed. When I started out, I didn't really have any standards because I didn't know anything, and I didn't know anything about this business. Absolutely nothing. So I think it's just in learning and seeing these things, and also starting this before the internet. You had to read books and you had to talk to other people, which is and I kind of square back to this of why this is the best job ever, and all the people that I work with and do this of the show and tell, because you need a person to show it to you and tell you about it. And now the internet is great because there's all these different Facebook groups for every bizarre collectible you could imagine, and people could get into the minutia, of why and who designed it and what years. I just wanted to go back to what I was talking about before, but I mean, the store, we sell lots of mid-century modern things. That's what's popular. I always say vintage is a trend. I don't really call myself an antique dealer. I call myself a vintage dealer. So it's watching those trends. 80s and 90s fashion's a big deal. Vinyl has come back with a vengeance. Like, who would have thought that, right? I could have made a fortune if I'd kept all the records from my house music days. but I didn't schlep it around records. But kind of the more you see, then you kind of realize, I started out thinking that I was collecting things that were unusual, but as I went along, I realized it wasn't all that unusual. And so now it takes a lot for me to be like, I'm gonna keep
really wowed by something.
Because do I really need this? I'm glad I bought the things I did in the past. I was collecting. This is something that's popular now. So like tattoo people. Turn of the century cabinet cards.
That's fun.
This is Jojo the dog-faced boy.
Oh, that's amazing.
Right, I get a cabinet card, and then on the back, it says Fedor Vestichu. He's 20 years old. This was taken in 1892. It says it on the back.
That's incredible. And by the way, if you're not watching these, go over to youtube.com/playfulhuman so you can watch the video version of this and see the things he's showing. I think I've seen that picture before. That's amazing.
Well, what's interesting is I've kind of realized it. He's so early, and he was a big slideshow star at the turn of the century.
Yeah.
People that there was a little person, Lucretia Zarate, was making 10 grand a week.
That's crazy.
She had her own train car when she traveled. She was the Madonna of her time. And now people go like, what are you talking about? But this is, again, before radio, before television. These were stars. They were stars. But again,
you have a holy grail of something that you're still looking for that you haven't found yet?
I do love Jojo the dog-faced boy things. And I've got a ticket stub from one of his exhibitions. I missed, because these people would sell things. That's how they would sell these photographs. And also who photographed them was a big deal too. Charles Eisenman was regarded as the quintessential freak photographer, their expression, not mine. But to have him take your photo was a big deal. He had a studio in the Bowery in New York, and it was like the best of the best. He was Scribensky, So anything related to him. So the thing I missed was apparently for a while he was selling a pipe. and the end of the pipe, the stem of the pipe, and then the pipe was his face.
Oh, wow.
And a
That
friend
sounds cool.
tells me about this. It was here in Chicago, sitting in an antique store, and the guy tells me about this. A friend of mine, and he goes, "I don't know if you would have wanted that." And of course I drop everything. I could have been on fire, and I go running over there. It's gone. It's gone. I've never
Oh,
done
no.
another one. So like I'd say that's kind of a holy grail. Thanks for bringing that up and like bumming me out for 30 seconds.
Yeah, we'll change it back around. And I wanted to get to you and the work you're doing now, because I think a lot of people find these stories incredible, which is why I think that like Pawn Stars and all of those other shows are so successful. I don't know if you watch, I would love The Curse of Oak Island and hearing the stories and the treasure hunting and
there's
stuff too. All of that, super cool. So that takes me to your books and your writing. I feel like you have a very playful career in that it's not just one thing. I love that you do a lot of things and you like to, produce stuff as well as collect stuff. And I think that to me is one of the keys of happiness. I found if you're just consuming, it really kind of becomes a treadmill. You can't consume enough to make yourself happy. But if you're producing, you create more value in the world and you kind of feel more fulfilled and long-term by that. But I could be projecting on you. So what made you write Sell Dead People's Things and now the new book, Vintage Confidential?
Well, I've been writing really since I was a kid. And what I kind of realized now is I just didn't have a whole lot to say. And I wasn't good at making shit up. Let's just to be honest. I really, and I've had a couple plays, and one was kind of a minor hit here in town, the Bloody Fabulous Curse of Dracula, and that ran for like 6 weeks. But it's good to get some feedback on something that's successful, because it's hard to fail and pick yourself up again. But you have to do it. Somebody told me the other day is you'll never appreciate the mountaintop until you walk through the valley to get there. I love that. So it came around that I had a chance to take a writing class in New York with Gretchen Cryer, who is John Cryer's mother, and she's a writing coach. And quickly, so I had a chance to do it. Looked at my schedule, and she's picky about who she takes 20 people a year in groups of 10, and I had to turn her down. I couldn't make it happen with my schedule. And a year later, my schedule kind of opened up, and I contacted her, and I said, "Start with you. Probably don't remember me, but," and she said, "I remember you. You're the guy who turned me down. Nobody turns me down." And she's the sweetest lady, let me tell you.
It's so great though. Yeah,
I remember you. So went to New York. That was during Hurricane Sandy. That was a treat for like 6 weeks. And you had to write there in her apartment. And she had the greatest like lesson plans you can imagine. And everything had to be real. There's no fiction. This is not a fiction writing class. This had to be your personal experiences. You had to write about you. So
love that.
Yeah. And she would say something like, "Okay, I want you to write down the 5 worst things that ever happened to you. Just make a list." And then she'd go around and she'd say, "I want 10 minutes of number 3. I want 10 minutes of number 2, right?" And then you had maybe 20 minutes to write right there, not a computer. I couldn't even read my own handwriting. That was my problem. And then you got up and you did it. You did it. Well, it was shocking. It was shocking what people would talk about. I mean, I'll bring it down for a second here. That people are talking about molestations and drug overdoses and conversion camps. There was a woman who said she was abducted by an alien, and somebody else that was like incest. I mean, it was wow, just wow. And so this went on for 6 weeks, and every week somebody would drop out. It would be like a great reality show.
Really? Wow.
It was just that intense. It was really very, very intense. And I was doing really well for about the first 3 or 4 weeks. And then I decided I'd write about an estate that I was at. I'll write about what I do, because I'd just been writing personal things. I thought, I'll write about what I do. And I did it, and everybody went, "Bullshit." That didn't happen. You can't write fiction. And I said, no, it really happened. I had friends who were there. And I realized I had failed. But what I'd failed in doing is telling the story accurately, tell it convincingly.
Right.
And okay, so that week I didn't do well. And I went through the rest of the class. We were still kind of rated, so I came in like number 3 of 7 or something like that, 6. So I was like right in the middle. But these were incredible people. There were people there who'd won. There was a woman there who'd won a Grammy. There was another woman there she'd had 3 books on the New York Times bestseller list. And I'm like, what is this, guy from Chicago doing here? So go back to Chicago. I rewrite the story 15 times, and on a total lark, because I can tell you, I got a stack rejection slips this high, right? Somebody said, you know what? I know a guy at the New York Times. You should send it in. Sent it in. They buy it.
Wow.
And I went, I'm onto something. It was a great phone call when the guy called me, and he says, you know what I do all day? I read shit.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, he goes, I get to make a phone call like this. And right now I'm talking to you. And I'm like, Michael Weinrip of the New York Times. We should call him for discovery.
Awesome.
Thank you, Michael, who had won his own Pulitzer. And I went, you know what? There's something to this. And then I started researching to see, well, aren't there other antique dealers who've written memoirs about what they've done? And I could only find one that had been written in the 70s by some British guy, of course. And I thought, I stumbled into a little niche here. And when I had been doing this, from going to sales and keeping my little notepad of unusual circumstances. And I'm very much a people person, and it's not about, I'll say this to people too, if you want to get into the business, don't concentrate so much on the money, concentrate on having fun, talking to people, helping people, because oftentimes it can be a difficult situation when you are clearing out an estate and dealing with people who are bereaved. Be there for them, and give good things out, and good things will come back to you. And that's what I found, and then stumbled on some incredible stories. So I always tell people, if I'm selling dead people's things, it's not like these things happen to me every day. They don't. This is over 20 some years.
Yeah.
My best story.
I think there's great lessons in sales for that to me. I mentioned it earlier, just, negotiating and everything, but also I found in all of these shows, you have to wade through a lot of junk to kind of find those golds, those really very profitable pieces. And it's really about helping people solve problems. If you can do that, you get more opportunities to find those good items and those really profitable things, which I think is a really interesting kind of life lesson there. I wanted to give you one more chance to help somebody else. It sounds like you've had a history and a career of kind of taking chances, putting yourself out there. If somebody has written stuff like poetry or plays like you have, or books, but they haven't shown anybody, what would your advice be to somebody that maybe hasn't taken that jump to be playful in their career yet?
Sure. Well, again, the internet is fantastic. There's all kinds of groups that you can join. So, I mean, if you're a poet, or there's memoir groups, there's fiction groups, and generally people are very supportive, of one another. Years ago, I mean, when I was growing up, it would be called like vanity publishing. You put something out there and it's not good. That's gone. Now it's print on demand. People can produce their own content. You don't need a publisher, but you should always hire an editor and a proofreader and put out quality. So first, just, if you can find a mentor, and I mean, I work with a number of people have come to me, and let me tell you, I go to other people as well. I always will. Why wouldn't I? Who am I? But it makes me a better writer. It makes me a better marketer. It makes me a better, content, provider. So you need people. And I think that's maybe what we miss. And for the theme of the show, it's to bring the fun of it in. It shouldn't be work. I'm friends with the composer, and he always says, the fun is in creating it, not in selling it, which is true. I
think you have to realize that's one thing that I would add on to what you're saying. I love the message about finding people and connecting, because there's always going to be something you don't do. I hate that quote, find what you love and you'll never work another day in your life, because you still got to do taxes. You still have to, deal with lawyers and the other stuff that you've mentioned today. Right. And I've kind of found, especially with the book that I wrote, finishing the book is the starting line. That's not the finish line. And so the finishing a book idea is a terrible one because you're never really finished. It's kind of just as good as you decide to make it before you run out of time or money. And then really marketing the book is the hard part, getting anybody else to read it. And so I think those are great tips here. But do you want to play a game?
Sure.
All right, we're going to spin our wheel of games. There are 10 games that it could land on, and you got... Ooh, 2 truths and a lie. We haven't done this one in a while. So 2 truths and a lie is pretty easy. I will go first. I'll give you 2 truths about myself and then 1 lie. You have to pick the lie. And anybody listening can play along. In high school, I did the morning announcements over the broadcast speaker there. In high school, I was also a star in an after-school special on PBS. And I was a sportswear model in a magazine in high school.
That's tough. I'm going to go with the sportswear model.
You're right. That's correct. I did model some jerseys for the high school, but it was not official or anything. So that's how I came up with that one. The PBS special was on sportsmanship and athletics. My mom and I were featured in it. That was kind of fun. And I did the morning announcements. I did the weather in a different voice every day. And people thought there were multiple people doing the announcements with us. So I do like Sean Connery and be like, it's 79 outside, you know? and had fun with it. All right, you nailed it. You win that one, but now it's your round. Can you give us 2 truths and a lie?
Let's see. I'm a really good dancer. I made $1 million before I was 25. I had a relationship with a Warhol superstar.
Ooh, that one is tough. I feel like you've given me some curveballs here. You said earlier you were a gay white man. Those are contradictory for the dance move. So I'm going to say that's the lie. You're not a good dancer.
Correct.
There you go. The white guy part overtook that part there.
That's kind of a terrible dancer.
That's funny. That's awesome. Well, we both win, so it's a tie, which means you get the prize here. 30 seconds for anything that we can do to help you or you can do to help us. What do you think?
Oh gosh, let's see. I think people should contact your show and suggest other writers and creative people to be guests, and why. Maybe somebody who's like not in the, necessarily in this world or does this regularly. I do this semi-regularly. Somebody think like who could use a break, right? Who could use the exposure to be on this show. So let's pay it forward that way. That would be my suggestion.
That would be awesome. I love it. And if you want to check out more of these amazing stories that Duane has, go to vintageconfidential.com. Again, the first book was Selling Dead People's Things. That was a bestseller. You can go get Vintage Confidential, Retro Rattled, and Tales Tattled right now at vintageconfidential.com. Duane Cerny, thanks for being on the show. And again, for more on Playful Humans, go to playfulhumans.com. Our mission here is just try to help adults rediscover the power of play, have fun in your career, beat burnout and boredom, find more fun, flow, and fulfillment in what you're doing. And most importantly, I think if you can't be good at it. That's what I always say. Go play, everybody. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us.
For tomorrow, live for today. Keep on chasing the sunshine and go out and play.
Hey, you did it. You made it to the end. But don't worry, there are plenty of more videos where that came from. Just click subscribe to Playful Humans to get notified about our future videos. Now, what are you still doing here? Go play.